Today's video is brought to you by Cars and Bids, my online enthusiast car auction site that recently sold this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Check it out at carsandbids.com. This is the new 2023 Honda Pilot, and it's totally new and fully redesigned this year, after the last version of the Pilot was starting to get pretty old. There's a lot to like about this new Pilot, some big improvements, and today I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the new Honda Pilot with one of its most important features, and that would be the styling, which has changed dramatically compared to the outgoing Pilot. Over the last few years, Honda has watched from the sidelines as boxy-looking, capable-seeming SUVs have skyrocketed in popularity. The Kia Telluride, the new Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Toyota 4Runner, and many others. Not all of them even have capabilities, but they look like they do, and buyers love it. And so for the new Pilot, Honda has gone in that direction. More rugged, more boxy, more capable, truck-looking, off-road friendly, aggressive styling to help this car stand out and give it a more muscular feel in a segment that's mainly kind of boring suburban mom and dad cars. In fact, Honda wants so badly to compete with these off-roady SUVs that they've even created an off-road version of the new Pilot, a mid-size family crossover. It's called the Trailsport, and it is this model. And I'll go through some of the upgrades to the Trailsport later on in this video. But if you don't get the Trailsport and you just get one of the regular Pilot trims, like most people will, you'll find that despite the boxy, aggressive styling under the skin, it's a lot like the old, normal-looking Pilot, which means 3.5-liter V6 that makes 285 horsepower. The old one was 280. We're up by 5. Also a 10-speed automatic transmission. The old one was a 9-speed, but we're up by 1. Again, fairly minor changes under the skin. Frankly, it's largely the same. And the interior has a lot of the same benefits as the outgoing Pilot too, although there are some nice refinements and some interesting quirks and features, and I'll start here in the third row. So, 3 across seating back here, 3 seat belts, and you can get the Pilot in an 8-seat or 7-seat configuration. This one is a 7-seater. Accessing the third row is tremendously easy. Just press this button on the side of the second row and do nothing else. It folds forward and slides forward, giving you easy access to the third row. Gotta be the easiest third row access in the entire car industry. Now, you get into the third row and you discover it's kinda tight. Not exactly an adult-friendly place, but most people use it for children anyway. The good news is there's a lot of nice amenities back here. You have USB ports on both sides of the third row, so rear passengers can charge their devices. You also have cup holders back here, so third row passengers have a place for their drink, obviously, and climate vents dedicated just for the third row, so people sitting in the way back have climate control too. The third row of this vehicle is no longer the penalty box that it has been in the past, and that it still is in some other 3-row SUVs. And climbing out of the third row in the new Pilot is tremendously easy as well. You push this button here, mounted on the back of the second row, and again, the seat folds forward and slides forward. Very easy, and you just climb right out. It's a pretty decent third row, all things considered. And next up, we move on to the second row, the back seat of the Pilot, and as you can see, individual captain's chairs back here, so 2 individual seats, but like I said, you can get this in 7-seater or 8-seater configuration, and if you get the 8-seater, that means a bench seat here in the second row with a middle seat for more seating capacity. But if you get the captain's chairs, and most SUV buyers prefer to, you will find there's pretty good space back here. Good leg room, good headroom, knee room, thigh room. It's all great in the back of the Pilot, and there are some nice amenities as well. For example, you have 2 USB ports in the center console back here, which is pretty standard fare, but you also have a household style charge port, which is great to see. Always useful to have that in a back seat for charging all manner of devices that may not work with USB. I also love the door panel storage. You have 2 different rows of door storage here and cup holders built into the door panel panel that can even hold unusually large cups, like my giant water bottle, which fits nowhere, can actually fit into the door panel here, which is a nice benefit. And speaking of storage, here's a cool little flap on the back of the front seat. That's for dedicated cell phone storage. If you want a place to put it instead of it getting lost in this large map pocket back here, stick it in this snug little compartment, and then you know exactly where it is when it's time to go. I also love the integrated rear sunshade here. You have this roll-up sunshade in the rear doors, so you can shield infants or toddlers from the sun, which is nice to have built into the car. And in the back of this Pilot, you have climate controls, as you can see. Adjust your climate temperature back here, which is also a nice feature to have for rear passengers. As far as drawbacks go in this rear seating area, there really aren't many. This is a fantastic back seat, exactly what you'd expect, but a couple of little criticisms. One, this center area between the seats is frankly nothing. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't open as storage. They make it durable so you can step on it while you're climbing into the third row or climbing out, but the result is it's basically just wasted space, and it seems a little weird that it has no function. Also, it would be nice to have heated rear seats back here. You might think family SUV, your kids don't need heated rear seats, but this is the Trailsport Model, the adventure version. You're going somewhere into the wilderness, it would be nice to heat your butt and back, and a lot of other midsize SUVs have them at this price point. So, since I brought up the Trailsport, let's talk about the Trailsport. This is, like I mentioned earlier, the off-road oriented trim level of the Honda Pilot, which are words I never thought I would say. This has always been a generic middle-of-the-road family SUV. Well, now it has an off-road version. Of course, to capitalize on this big trend among SUVs, off-roading, overlanding, well, now even the Honda Pilot is jumping on board. And the Trailsport has a surprisingly decent amount of legitimate off-road upgrades, unlike the Honda Passport, which came out as like a shortened Pilot and they were marketing it as an off-roader. This actually has some real stuff. So let's get into it, starting with standard all-wheel drive. The regular Pilot trim levels come standard with front-wheel drive. The Trailsport has all-wheel drive only, and the system has been tweaked a little bit to help it out in off-road situations. It can send more power to individual rear wheels in case you're about to get stuck for better traction. So all-wheel drive standard, and it's improved. There's also a 1-inch lift compared to the regular Pilot, which again, something I never thought I'd say, but this is a lifted Honda Pilot with smaller wheels to allow for larger all-terrain tires, as you can see. Taking a page right out of the Ford Raptor playbook, smaller wheels but bigger tires means more off-road capability. Now, other exterior off-road upgrades I'm not quite as enthused about. For instance, Honda proudly touts in their press release that this car has lower door brush guards, but I don't think that really has an effect. They're intended to look like rock rails, but they aren't those. You don't really need lower door brush guards, but they're there, and they do make it look cooler. Honda also says this has stainless steel skid plates, although it kind of feels like plastic. You can see I'm getting under here, pushing around. It seems to me like plastic, but Honda says stainless steel front and rear, and so I guess I'll take them at their word, but that doesn't seem like a massive upgrade, actual steel skid plates, but some of the other stuff is. Now, here in the interior, there are also some important tech features that improve the off-road capabilities as well. One is hill descent control. Activated with this button, it's actually a pretty desirable off-roading feature. It can keep you at a steady, slow pace going down a steep off-roading hill without you having to ride the brakes. Normally only see that on serious off-roaders, and that's a nice upgrade in this Pilot. You also have a feature in the camera system that Honda calls Trail Watch, although what it really is a couple cameras mounted on the front sides of the car that sort of look down the edges. The theory here is you're on a narrow trail, you don't want to scrape the side of the car, so the cameras can see that, and it's nice to have, although a lot of cars just have this in their regular array of parking cameras, but Honda has branded it Trail Watch, and it might be useful. Now, aside from all the upgrades I already mentioned, there's also some cosmetic upgrades upgrades to enhance the look of the Trailsport. The most obvious is the color. You can see this baby blue exterior, which is obviously meant to imitate the special colors Toyota has done on its TRD Pro models. They're known for crazy, cool, exciting, standout colors, and Honda clearly wanted to get in on that, and so they've done something similar for the Pilot Trailsport. On the outside, you also have badging. In the front grille, an orange Trailsport badge, and on the tailgate and back, another Trailsport badge. You climb inside, you have thick Trailsport rubber floor mats, because you're gonna need them for all the muddy off-roading you're doing. And you have Trailsport stitched into the headrests, also in orange, to help go with the theme of this car. So a few Trailsporty cosmetic upgrades too. But anyway, next let's move on to the interior quirks and features up front. Although being a Honda, not really all that many. These cars are famous for being straightforward, simple, basic, and this is pretty much that. Start with the infotainment system, which is sort of tacked on to the top of the dashboard, and it's pretty small, although quite easy to use. In fact, the home button and the back button are separate buttons outside the screen, so you can easily touch them at any time, and the volume dial is a physical dial also outside the screen, which makes the user experience a little bit easier for most people. Same deal with the climate controls. None of them have been integrated into the screen. Instead, they're all down here in the center control stack, large, easy to use, simple. You don't have to deal with going into any menus or screens for the climate controls. Again, everything's straightforward, functional, just like you'd expect from a Honda, although there are a couple of cool quirks of the infotainment system, the coolest of which is CabinTalk, which is a feature that you can access in the center screen, and when you turn it on, it projects your voice from the driver's seat through the speakers to the rear seats in the car. That way your kids are playing around back there, you don't have to turn around and yell at them, you just speak in your normal voice and they'll hear it through the speakers. Take a look at a little demonstration done by me. This is the Honda Pilot, and today I'm showing you its quirks and features. And another cool feature of the infotainment system is accessing the camera system in the Pilot. So you shift into reverse and the cameras pop up on the screen just like in all modern cars. But if you want to get the cameras on before you shift into reverse, you're pulling into a tight spot, you want to see where the edges are, you can push a button at the end of the windshield wiper stalk marked camera, and then they pull up instantly on the screen. That's a great feature. A lot of cars, to get into the camera system, you got to go into some menu, and it's several different prompts. Here, just one button, the camera is on, and that makes life easier. And next up, moving down from that center infotainment screen, a few other interesting items. For one, the charger situation. This car has 4 different types of chargers within 6 inches. You have USB-A, USB-C, a cigarette lighter style, and a flat wireless charger, so your charging needs will be met regardless of how you wish to charge your device. Now, also in this area is probably the only really unusual thing in here, and that's the gear selector, which is here. It's kind of strange, a mix of buttons and switches, but this is how all Hondas and Acuras have done their automatic transmission gear selectors for a while, and you get used to it. Park is a button marked P, reverse is a little switch you kind of pull towards you, N for neutral, and then D for drive, surrounded by silver at the bottom. Again, a little unorthodox, but it works reasonably well. Now, below that, you have a switch to control the drive modes, and unbelievably, this vehicle has 7 different drive modes. A Honda Pilot has 7 different drive modes to choose from. Now, the 3 basic ones are obvious. You have Eco, Normal, and Sport. From there, the additional modes are largely based on this being the off-road Trailsport model. You have Snow, Trail, Sand, and then a tow mode as well. So 7 individual drive modes in the Pilot Trailsport tailored to your precise driving preference. And another nice feature in this Pilot's straightforward interior is the massive amount of interior storage. The center console, open up this storage lid, and it's huge in here, as you can see, space for a lot of stuff. Then there's a glove box, of course, which has space for, Well, even more stuff. Above the glove box, the passenger side of the dashboard, you have this little storage area where you can keep items if you want them within easy reach, which is nice to have. And on the door panel, once again, you have 2-level door panel storage for all sorts of items. Driver and passenger side, you have that, and cup holders in the door panel, which again account for massive water bottles if you want to stick them there. Truly great, excellent, practical interior storage. As for the gauge cluster screen behind the steering wheel, this is a rather interesting one. At first glance, it looks like a large full screen, but in fact, you have on the right a traditional old school analog gauge. Only the left half of this gauge area is a screen, and it's not really all that great. It's somewhat configurable. You can choose one screen to change to your preferences, but nowhere near as vastly configurable as many rivals, especially higher-end SUVs. One interesting thing is that the very top trim level of the new Pilot, which is called the Elite, does get a full-screen gauge cluster, larger and I presume more configurable, but I wasn't able to test that one out. And it's only on the very top trim. You can't get it in any of the other lesser models, including the Trailsport. So with that in mind, let's talk trims for a second. The new Pilot has quite a few of them, ranging from the base model LX, starts around $37,300, all the way up to the Elite, which starts around $53,300. So it really runs the gamut. In the middle, sort of on the higher side, is this Trailsport. Starts around $50,000. All of these prices include shipping, and so that's if you want to go off-roading in your Pilot, the $50,000 Trailsport. As for fuel economy, the EPA says 19 miles per gallon city driving, 25 in highway driving if you get all-wheel drive, and of course, a little bit better if you choose to save some weight and go with two-wheel drive. And finally, we move into the cargo area of the new Pilot, which is not particularly quirky, but it is rather practical. I said it because even with the third row in place, there's decent storage space back here, as you can see, and there's even more space if you lift up the load floor. You got extra storage down there for even more items. You can stick stuff below or above the floor, or remove it entirely for some large thing, even with the third row in place. You also have a little charge port back here in case you want to do some tailgating from the back of your Pilot, which adds to the practicality. But my favorite thing is undoubtedly how easy it is to fold down these seats. You get this little strap here, you just pull on it and push the seat, and it's down. That's all. You want the seat back up, you reach up, grab the strap, pull on it, and the seat's back in place. A lot of these luxury SUVs have buttons back here, you push, and that's very easy, but it takes a few seconds. Nothing is easier than just grabbing a strap, pushing, and the seat is gone. All right, driving the new Pilot Trailsport. Now, if your question about this vehicle is it fun? The answer is no, unequivocally no. If your question about this vehicle is, does it do everything I want for a mid-size family SUV? The answer is yes, unequivocally yes. In fact, I'm going through this thing and I'm just thinking everything is practically thought out. Everything is designed to maximize practicality at the expense of style, at the expense of coolness. Like, it's not any of those things, but it's just good, which is why Honda typically sells 150,000 of these every year in the United States, because it's just good. So let's talk about what makes it so good. It is the way it's designed, the practicality, they've thought through everything that people need out of a mid-size SUV. The infotainment is actually a great example. This is not the best infotainment system in the car industry, period, but it's probably the simplest. Your climate controls are not part of the infotainment. Your next track, your volume, your home button are all dedicated buttons. The screen is small. It's not like the most flashy and beautiful and high quality and like, oh my God, show your friends there's cool stuff, but it works exactly how you'd expect it to. And that carries through to the driving experience. You got a big V6 in here. Honda hasn't tried to experiment with different powertrains. You know, the new Sienna has a hybrid 4-cylinder, but the Odyssey still runs with its old school V6, and that's the same situation here. Honda hasn't gone to hybrids, they haven't gone to turbo 4-cylinders, they haven't tried to even do a plug-in hybrid Pilot. They're not trying to do anything different or cool or sexy or weird. They just want stuff that works, and this does. So it's a fairly traditional mid-size family SUV, a basic passenger vehicle like you would expect. Now, the drawback of that is, you know, you don't have some of the really nice stuff or the really fun stuff that you do get if you step up to like a BMW X5, for example, or Mercedes GLE. The interior noise is a good example. It's louder in here. Now, I suspect it's louder in here generally than in other Pilot models because of the all-terrain tires, but even then, you know, you have wind noise, which is not going to change with the tires. You hear stuff more. The ride is a little bit rougher than in a luxury SUV. Again, this is based on giving you the things you need, making the most practical car, but not necessarily giving you like cool, awesome stuff. Another good example is just the steering and handling. I mean, it's very neutral, very predictable, but again, not fun. You're not throwing this thing around any corners. You're not going to be enjoying this car anywhere, except maybe on relatively moderate off-road trails, more than you'd ever take any other Pilot on. Generally speaking, though, this is a fairly tame vehicle in terms of the way that it drives. It's a mid-size SUV. It doesn't have any more excitement or thrill or bravado than that. It's just a good, reasonable vehicle. And that's why people have always bought Pilots, and that's why they'll continue to buy Pilots. And this new one is just as excellent as ever before, with a few nice refinements. A few things have been smoothed out, a few things are better. The styling, frankly, looks nicer. You got a little bit more interior space in here, and now you have this off-roader version if that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, it's just another great version of a vehicle that everybody already agrees is great. But again, not an excitement machine, not even like a 4Runner. It's not fun, but it's great. And so that's the new 2023 Honda Pilot. This is an impressive new mid-size SUV with some great technology and a practical interior. And now that it's been redesigned, it's once again back among the very best rivals in the very competitive mid-size SUV race. And now it's time to give the new Pilot a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 50 out of 100, which places the Pilot Trailsport here against the competition. It scores well, tying the Hyundai Palisade and Kia Telluride, which are both major segment leaders. The Pilot scores a bit better in the weekend categories on account of its off-road upgrades. Compared to the Pilot in general, though, I'd probably rather have a Palisade or a Telluride for their better styling, slightly improved tech, and more comfortable ride, but the new Honda Pilot is an excellent competitor and clearly among the very best new mid-size family SUVs.